This is your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 1st, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today.
So every year for the past 3 years, I've thought about putting together an April Fool's joke where I was going to create an app called Zero Task. And the idea is that you would kind of put things into the to-do list, and you would, as soon as you hit enter, it would just clear the list out and it'd say you have 0 tasks. So something kind of, it would be, and that was the initial thought. Didn't really flesh it out all that much. And I thought, based on what I do, I don't know how trustworthy that would make me as a productivity strategist to do something like that, because there is time taken into entering all your tasks and such. Maybe there would have been an implementation in place that you could have grabbed them. It would have been stored somewhere. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that this is not really a good use of my time. It's not, at least not right now. It would be foolish to do it. And we do a lot of things foolishly. There is this element of foolish productivity. And I don't mean like what Austin Kleon and I will be speaking about on an upcoming episode of the weekly podcast I do, the Productivityist Podcast, because we do talk about fooling around with time. And I think you can do that. But there's a difference between fooling around and being foolish. Especially because if it's sustained, then what are you doing that, like, where is that time going? How does doing what you're doing lead to any progress? And I think that foolish productivity puts you in a position where it seems as if you're doing something. It's like that busy work, but you're not really making progress. And, it comes in many ways and shapes and forms, just like fools do, right? It comes in and it can look like productivity. I mean, look at fool's gold versus gold. It can look like actual gold. They look the same, but one is far more valuable than the other. So I want you to maybe look at your to-do list today, or look at the things you've been doing and ask yourself, is this been foolish for me to pursue this, for me to work on this? Either foolish for me to do it at all, or foolish for me to be doing it and I should delegate it. Like, really look at your to-do list and your task list and your project management, all that stuff, and say, hey, is this something that is foolish for me to pursue, foolish for me to work on? And if it is, ask yourself, is it something that needs to be worked on at all? Is it something that maybe I can delegate to somebody else? Because either, it's not using my strengths, but it certainly would leverage theirs. It's okay to self-assess and realize that, hey, I'm doing some foolish things. It's not okay if you don't do that and you keep doing it and you say, oh, you know what, it's fine. It's not fine. Foolish productivity is not productivity. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 2nd. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. See you later. In Austin Kleon's new book, spoiler alert, there's an element where he talks about worrying and the idea of keeping. So keep doing this, keep doing that, and then worry. Those words come in at some point in the book. And I want to talk about worry and productivity and how they can go hand in hand, and how worry can help you, but it can hurt you at the same time, depending on how you're looking at it. So I think that the biggest thing that you can do to stave off worry is to give yourself other ways to look at your to-do list and the things you need to do, so that nothing really falls through the cracks. Kind of make it foolproof. Yesterday I talked about foolish productivity. You want, by putting a framework in place that you can trust, something that's simple and flexible for you and durable. it creates this almost foolproofness to it, so that when you say, hey, you know what, it's Wednesday, it's my listening day, but I'm really tired. So, okay, I don't feel like doing any tasks related to listening. Let me look at all my shallow work tasks. Oh, great. Here's a whole bunch there. Like, you're removing decision fatigue from the idea of decision fatigue from the equation. So when you do that, you create less worry about, oh, is this going to get done? How am I going to do this? Like that worry, which can lead to fear, or it's a nice companion for fear at any rate. It puts you in a position where you're not going to be, you're not going to be slowed down for the wrong reason. I think slowing down can be important, but in this case, your progress is being impeded because there's some emotional stuff attached to it. And, you want that balance between logic and emotion. You want something that falls in line with reason. But I also think worry can help, because what it does, if you're worrying about something, then you want to bring attention to it. So again, I think something that you can do today, and I think this would be helpful, is write down all the things that you could find yourself worrying about at any given time. Things that if they didn't get done, you would worry, or things that you need to do and you're worried that you might miss out on it. And then put a framework in place, whether it's themes, whether it's, working by modality, whether it's just having a simple reminder at the beginning of the day or a Post-it note or something like saying, hey, don't forget these things, that will keep the worry at bay. So worry can be useful. It can be detrimental, but it can also be useful. So I highly recommend you do this. And I think you can do this for things that, are rather unconventional too. Like, I'm worrying that I'm not spending enough time with my kids. Put something in place that kind of alleviates that worry. So again, you can't eliminate worry, but you can keep it at bay. And you can keep it, as a positive if you, leverage it. So I encourage you to do that. There you go. That's your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I hope this was helpful to you. And this is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 3rd, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. We all have things that are on our to-do list that kind of just sit there. David Allen's talked about this in his Getting Things Done methodology with the someday maybe list, which I think having a list similar to that is important as long as you have a way to pay attention to it consistently. And that's why he often uses it as, say, a context as opposed to an actual list. Like and I think that what a someday maybe list does, or, I tend to call it like the capture closet, things you put in your closet and you'll go and organize it later. What those kind of categories do, what those modalities do, whatever you want to call it, context, whatever, is they create hope. When you put those things down there is the hope that they will be something that you can work on at some time in the future. And it's important that you foster hope with your to-do list by capturing those things, which basically are intentions that you may not be able to pay attention to yet. So they are initially probably goals. And goals are kind of like, goals are broader, I think, but tasks are broken down. Goals tend to be related more to projects or initiatives, and tasks tend to be things that, can be made up into projects and goals and or tasks or initiatives. And so I think that the biggest thing you can do is when you have something that you hope for, or that you make sure you foster the hope for, is again, write it down and maybe create a modality called, I'm going to look at the things that I hope for. And so have a hoping, that's an activity-based mode, but like, what am I hoping for? Let me look at all the things I'm hoping for. You can also level these alongside with gratitude too, because I think hope and gratitude go hand in hand, because hope is almost like aspirations, whereas gratitude is, here's what I already have. So they can kind of go hand in hand. I think that the biggest thing that we don't do is we tend to put all these very practical things on our to-do list, the conventional things, and we don't put things that are, the people stuff. I think the people stuff matters. Whereas the system stuff should help with the people stuff, but the system can fail. People, you kind of put your faith that that's not going to happen, and hope is part of that. So, again, if you aren't already doing this, find a way to categorize or isolate the things you're hoping for on your to-do list. And it doesn't have to be long-term hopes. They can be short-term, and again, use the verbs like, hope for this, hope that this, and just put that in there, because I think that I know that actually it's better for you in the long run. And it makes your to-do list that much more enjoyable to look at because you got something to look forward to. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy, and I'll see you later. At least I hope to see you later. This is your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 4th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. There will be days when you feel compelled to write at midnight because you have something important to say that goes well beyond journaling. There will be days when your system isn't working at its best. There will be days when distractions, disruptions, and diversions get the better of you. There will be days when intention doesn't get the attention it requires. There will be days when attention doesn't get the intention it requires. There will be days when you rush around instead of looking around. There will be days when the resistance wins more than it loses. There will be days when all of these things happen. Here's the thing. The goal is to make them as infrequent as possible. Don't punish yourself too much when they occur. Simply notice it and work towards figuring out how to ward them off going forward. Because really, that's the only way you can help yourself to move forward instead of moving in directions that you don't really want to go. Yesterday was a day like that for me. I remember it pretty clearly because yesterday was my listening day, and it was the day where I was supposed to listen to the work that I really needed to be doing, which included recording this podcast, which landed almost 12 hours later than usual. You're just getting to it probably now, and it's been at least 12 hours or close to 12 hours since I published it. There were other things that I needed to do as well. There are things that I wanted to do, but the resistance got in the way. Stephen Pressfield calls it the resistance, and the resistance comes in many, many forms. And even today, I can kind of feel it. You know, I really should be recording more episodes than just this one. And as it stands right now, I don't know that I'm going to do that. I looked at my calendar and I've got a pretty full day. But here's the thing. Like I just said, I'm not going to punish myself when it happened. I'm just noticing it. And I'm going to work towards figuring out how to make sure that I can make today better than yesterday. And that way I can move forward in the direction I want to move in instead of just not moving at all or madly in different directions. So now that I'm done this and shared it with you, I'm ready to move forward. And I hope you're ready to move forward with your day as well. This has been your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 5th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So I've been a fan of Green Lantern for years, not since childhood, but for years. And the primary reason that I kind of gravitated towards him is because he's underrated as a superhero and also yet incredibly powerful. So that's where the underrating and the undervaluing comes from. And I tend to do this with all of, my superhero comic book folks. Iron Man for the longest time was underrated and undervalued until he came to the movies. Moon Knight was always seen as Marvel's version of Batman. And we all know how popular Batman is. And also, Vision, who is an Avenger, who is one of the more powerful Avengers out there, yet most people don't know who he is. And if they do, they don't recognize that. I remember watching Justice League, the Super Friends cartoon. And when they talked about, Lex Luthor said, we've got to get rid of the three most powerful Super Friends. It was Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern. But why am I so fixated on a Green Lantern? I mean, I've talked to Benjamin Hardy about willpower and how he, his idea that it doesn't work. Why is willpower such a prominent thing for me? And it boils down to the fact that willpower, for me, the Green Lantern, this avatar, is my way of beating past the detrimental emotions that don't serve you on a consistent basis. Fear can motivate you, but if you dwell in it, then it can be debilitating, right? Willpower in the face of fear can overcome it. Rage, which is what the Red Lanterns, the Yellow Lanterns are fear. Rage is what the Red Lanterns are more powerful. This all came through the Jeff Johns' kind of experiment with the spectrum of colors and the spectrum of light. Red is rage. And will with you can gain some measure of control over rage. So when I look at this is where all of this comes from. So why do I say the Green Lantern Oath when I'm running and I feel like I'm out of breath and can't go any further? Why, before I meditate, do I say the oath? Why do I have Green Lantern stuff all over my office? And why do I wear a ring? It's to help me and foster my will so that I can beat back those oppressive and emotions and qualities and things that don't serve me over the long haul. I don't know if that's something for you. Maybe willpower is that thing. Maybe it's something else, but I'm owning it. I'm embracing it, geek or otherwise. And if the will for me is the way, and the way that I'm able to tap into it is through this fictional character. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I hope it was helpful. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you next time. Here is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 6th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So whenever I sit down to plan, write, or create anything, I want to put myself in the best position to build something worthwhile. So in order to do that, I think about all the things I've been noticing up until that moment. The reason I'm thinking about this is that I just received, not too long ago, The Art of Noticing, an advanced copy by Rob Walker. So I've been thinking about noticing a lot lately. So here's what this kind of looks like when I'm writing something. So the first notice, well, when I started writing this particular script, I remembered that there was a book called The Noticer. And of course, The Art of Noticing brought that to my attention as well. So I decided to dive into the internet and see what quotes I could find from the book The Noticer that might help reinforce my writing. And that's when I noticed, fittingly, this quote: "Listen carefully to me. Despite popular belief to the contrary, there's absolutely no power in intention. There's no difference in the person who intends to do things differently and the one who never thinks about it in the first place. Have you ever considered how often we judge ourselves by our intentions while we judge others by their actions? Yet intention without action is an insult to those who expect the best from you." Andy Andrews, of course, wrote The Noticer. Now, this quote doesn't mean noticing or mention noticing directly, rather, but its message to me in noticing was twofold. Number one, I noticed the quote and it made me think differently about the direction I wanted to go with this particular podcast or this particular message to you. But I also noticed that the author's ideas of intention really do mirror mine when I say that personal productivity is all about intention plus attention, the partnership of those two things. So really noticing is the seed of decision making in a lot of ways. Like, you can notice something and decide to explore it deeper. You could also notice something and decide just to let it go. If you're going to dig deeper into it, then you're essentially making it an intention by deciding that it deserves more of your attention. But conversely, again, like I said, you can notice something and decide it's not worth any more of your time, and that means you have no intention to pursue it further. So what noticing does, and this is basically the first part of basically 3 little podcast things I'm going to do here for the show, is really to describe that noticing is the seed of decision making. And there is an art to noticing. And I can't wait to dig deeper into this particular book because, we need to take time to notice things. We need to spend time and revel in the noticing that we do, and then be intentional about which things we notice that we're going to dig into versus which ones we're just not. So tomorrow I'll talk a bit more about what happens, beyond the first notice, what goes into the second notice. But for now, that's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I hope you noticed something when I was speaking about this today. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 7th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So yesterday I talked about what noticing does, and really the first thing you notice. So, and I spoke of it in terms of me writing the script for this podcast, and actually a blog post that I've written about before about this. But now let's talk about the second notice. And again, this is all in relationships to this Art of Noticing book, The Art of Noticing by Rob Walker. And by the way, he has a fantastic newsletter. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, I recommend you do that as well. So the second notice. So let's talk about the concept of noticing, because that's what happened. Is I decided that after looking at, the noticer, that I'm going to explore the concept of noticing further. Now, once again, I began searching for quotes that would kind of fuel the fire and stoke it. So there were plenty of quotes about noticing, but it was difficult to find just the one that could work with the theme of the work that I do related to time management and intention management and attention management and all that stuff. So, and I almost gave in because there's just a lot to go through. Kind of resolved that I'd be ending, this podcast in one episode, or if it was a blog post, this piece, basically just, it would already be done. But then I found the quote. I think that journaling is a key to success. You can set clear goals for yourself. You can start noticing repetitive behavior patterns and see the type of things that keep bothering you. And then you can have a bird's eye view of it. This is from Eric Andre. Now, I've written about journaling many times. I've talked about it many times as well. And I'm a firm believer that the power of journaling is an undervalued personal productivity practice. It's why it's really a key element of time crafting. It's the thing that, if you're going to forego all the other things and you just want to start by journaling, it's a great place to start because it's the thing that will lead you to the types of themes that you might want to explore as daily or horizontal themes. It'll help you choose, the annual axiom that you might put in place. It'll help you decide on what your monthly theme should be. It will help you figure out what modes are best suited for you when it comes to mode-based work. Journaling is really all about getting out of your head what you've been noticing, be it daily stuff or otherwise. And then when you take the time to write about those things that you notice that are going on around you, and actually the things that are going on inside of you, you can make sure that your intentions are getting the attention that they need to flourish. So in this second part, the journaling component is really key. I think that if you spend some time journaling, even 5 minutes, 5-minute journal, that's a whole product based around 5 minutes of journaling. Just journal what you notice, both externally and internally. How you're feeling, what you saw, what made you feel that way. All of those things can be big clues as to what you should be spending and investing your time and attention on. And then those intentions you can bring from intention to action. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'll be back tomorrow with the third part.
This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 8th, 2019. I'm Mike Barty.
So this is the third and final part of my series on what noticing does. And so we're going to dive into the kind of the final notice, the thing that I noticed, after looking at something once, then seeing something deeper there. And now I'm in that third and final phase. So once you've spent time actually noticing things, you probably fall into the same pattern I do, which is you start to think about the idea of what happens when you stop noticing. So what would that do? Well, this quote jumped out at me, the idea of dying to be noticed, as that question rattled through my mind. One must always be aware to notice, even though the cost of noticing is to become responsible. That's by Thilius Moss. And when you notice something, you actually own what you do about it. So if you do nothing, then you're responsible for that. But if you do something, no matter what that something is, you are also responsible for that. So once you notice something, the cost is that you become responsible for it. So if you get an email and you notice it and you notice the contents of it, what you choose to do in that moment, you become responsible for it. Like whether you do something or nothing, whatever you do, because you spent time noticing, because there's a cost associated with that, you are now responsible for it, which is why I find it fascinating that people just say, I've noticed it and I'm going to mark it as unread. You've noticed it. It's read. It's pretty clear. So here are some notable examples, some other ones. So if you notice that you're spending too much time sharing things other people noticed on social media, then you're responsible for whatever comes of that, whether that's good or bad. If you spend some time journaling about what you've been noticing, then you're responsible for whatever comes from that, whether that's good or bad. If you notice that your family needs a holiday and you decide to cut back spending so you can make that happen, then you're responsible for whatever comes of that, whether that's good or bad. If you spend time noticing, as I mentioned, every email that comes in your inbox and reacting through replying immediately to each one or leaving them unread, you're responsible for whatever comes of that. And if you notice you're spending too much time checking email and decide to limit that time accordingly so you can have more time for deeper, more focused work, then you're responsible for whatever comes of that. So as long as we're alive, we are going to spend our time noticing things. What noticing does is it empowers us to make decisions that craft how we spend our time and attention and how we shape our lives. My question is, what does noticing do for you? Well, really, as I just mentioned, that's really up to you. I want you to think about this idea of noticing and the awareness that comes with the clarity that comes with it and the cost that comes with it. Because noticing is one of the biggest things that you can spend your time on so that you can figure out what you really need and want to be doing in any given moment. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 9th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. When I read Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, a great book, by the way, there was a metaphor about endings that stood out in particular to me. So he wrote that in order for a rose bush to flourish, that you don't just prune the dead buds and the diseased branches and all that. You actually need to prune the buds that are good, the buds that could make it. And really what that means is that, the buds that you're pruning that could have survived are really allowing the rest of the buds to kind of thrive. So instead of the bush just surviving, it actually winds up thriving. So I found that really fascinating because when you think about that in terms of, like, say, projects or initiatives that you might be undertaking, by pruning some of them, and by the way, with a rose bush, that branches and buds do come back. So every season you'll be pruning maybe one branch that was doing well, seasons ago, and then another one is the one that you let kind of flourish. But then 3 or 4 seasons later, you're cutting that one so that another one can. And it was funny because on my Instagram, I posted a tree that is basically in my neighborhood. As you're walking along the sidewalk, there's this branch that was just cut right off. And the reason is it was getting in the way of pedestrians. It was just too low. And so they cut it. Now, they cut it obviously because it was getting in the way of people, but also by cutting it, it's going to let the rest of the tree grow and thrive because it's not trying to feed that branch per se. And it wasn't the first branch, by the way, that was cut off of that tree. There has been several, and you could see it based on the cutting that you can see on the inside of it. So what I'd like you to consider is, if you're looking at all of your projects, maybe make a list of all the projects that you've got going on. Or that you want to start, or that you have started, and maybe they've kind of been languishing, and decide, is it time for their necessary ending? Is it time for you to end them, or maybe just cut them off for now? We hear about this all the time when it comes to projects being put on hold and things going on hiatus. I recently put one of my newsletters on hiatus. It's been on hiatus for longer than that, but I actually announced it was on hiatus. So I want you to think about necessary endings and maybe just try to end one thing today that's been kind of sitting there that you feel no longer serves you or others well, and see how that goes. Frame the ending as a way to make other things thrive. I think that's a great place to start, don't you? This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 10th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So I'm a bit of a quote fiend, and I tend to look around for quotes to post on Instagram, or even just get inspiration for my writing and for this podcast. And I found one from Winston Churchill. So Sir Winston Churchill. So regardless of your political beliefs or beliefs with the man, there was a quote that particularly kind of grabbed my attention, and it's, kites rise highest against the wind and not with it. And the idea behind that is, there's always going to be a struggle, and you kind of have to use it to your advantage. It kind of like the obstacle is the way that Ryan Holiday spoke about. And I started to think about how this could relate to time crafting. And really it boils down to the wind, the struggle being your own mind, so your own belief about what you can and can't do when it comes to crafting your time. So this belief that you don't have as much control over your time as you do. And then also the biases that show up that say, hey, you know what, there's no way I can theme particular elements of my time, or there's no way that I should be looking at, my energy levels and having that help dictate when I should be working on certain things, or I don't have time to break down projects to their smallest particle. So if I write down work on report, then I should just go to work on the report. It's the element of taking the time to do that. If you've ever flown a kite, you know that it takes time for it to rise to that highest peak, as high as it can, unless the wind is really strong, in which case it takes it up, but then it takes some time to control it and to get it so that you feel comfortable with it at that level, because you don't want to lose the kite in the process. So what I want you to think about today as we go through this 3-minute excursion here is this idea that the struggle isn't necessarily going to be the external factors, the people that you're working with, whether it's the people you're living with too, your family, they may not necessarily see how the way that you work is necessarily going to work for them all the time, but also the internal struggle that comes with that, because again, the external forces can take its toll on you internally. Just remember that the more you embrace how you want to craft your time and doing it bit by bit, the better you'll get at it. So that's the takeaway I want you to have today. Embrace the struggle, like lean into it, own it, and then figure out a way to make it more palatable as you go, so that you're not overwhelmed along the way. And that's one thing that time crafting can do for you. You don't have to adopt it all at once. You can adopt it piece by piece. And as you do, you go higher, further, and faster. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. I hope you're enjoying this daily dose of time crafting, and I'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 11th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Have you ever heard of the phrase pull focus or pulling focus? It's the idea of pulling you away from the thing you're either trying to do or trying to work on via some other way. And what's interesting is I wrote about the idea of push notifications and pull notifications several years ago on my blog. And it's something that I kind of wanted to revisit here, because I try to keep my notifications to a minimum. And I think that's a big thing that you should try to do as well. And notifications are just that. They're notifications. They're not commands. And when you allow push notifications, then what they do is they pull focus from what you might be doing at any given moment. So it's really important that when you are looking at a new app, or you get a brand new device, or what have you, and this doesn't just go for mobile, but it can also go for computers as well, because like the latest Mac OS, in fact, the last few iterations have allowed a notification center to happen on your desktop as well. Same thing happens with browsers such as Chrome. You can get notifications, push notifications in your browser, which will pull focus from what you've been working on. And the idea of the push notifications is that they are pushing you towards the thing that they want you to check out. So it's an email push notification, or a Facebook Messenger push notification, or an Instagram push notification. They pull focus. So you have to figure out where you're willing to allow your focus to be pushed and pulled from. So where are you thinking that, hey, it's okay for me to get interrupted and have my focus pulled because this notification is more important than what I'm working on right now, or it may contain something that's more important. So again, things like custom ringtones for people, that's a push notification, but it's one that gives you a little bit more of a clue. There's some more certainty surrounding it. Things like deciding whether or not you want to have that giant red dot on an app, the badge, versus just not worrying about it and getting banners. You really need to be more conscientious about the notifications that you get, because the more push notifications that you get, the more your focus is being pulled from other things. And if you really want to get some deep, meaningful work done, you can't be having your focus pulled in all different directions, because then you won't go in the direction that you ultimately want to go. So there you have it. Think about notifications. Think about the push. Think about the pull. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 12th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So in a recent conversation that I had with Justin Kerr, who has written the book, How to Be Great at Your Job, we talked about the idea of communication. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years, and I've talked to a lot of people about communication, is what platforms and mediums we use to communicate, and are they always the best ones? I've been thinking about things that are urgent. If you need to communicate something to someone urgently, is email the best platform to do it? Is texting even the best platform to do it at this point? Is it the most productive and efficient way to communicate something urgent to someone? I would posit that no, it's not. At least email isn't. Maybe text messaging is, because only select people may have your phone number, but even that's becoming a bit of an issue. What about actually picking up the phone and calling someone? Because not only do you get the fact that it stands out, because you don't probably get that many phone calls these days, but also there's the nuance and the tone in the voice that can tell you how urgent it really feels. There's some emotion attached to it, something that you're not necessarily going to get in a text message or in an email. And I think there's certain situations where a phone call does make more sense, and it's a more productive way to communicate. Whereas with email, is it really the best form of communication for tasks that you want to draw attention to? If you have something that's in there, do you want to use email to try to draw attention to something? If it's something that needs to be done more immediately, I would say no. I would say that if it's something that is important and you need to draw attention to that, then sure. But subject lines play a big role in that too. You can actually create email subject lines that indicate importance, or a level of crucial component to it. Again, I don't think email is the best form for urgent communication. But again, if you know that the person that you're dealing with is not someone that picks up the phone, then yes, putting something in the subject line would work that way. Now, how does this come back to Justin Kerr in my conversation with him? Well, he believed that communication is key. In fact, almost over communicating. And you'll hear this on a future episode of the Productivityist podcast that I recorded with him. So the other thing that I want to take time to mention real quick before I wrap up is, if you the seconds it takes to communicate something to someone, if let's say you're going to be late for a meeting or whatnot, can make all the difference in the world with your credibility, character, and integrity. So take that time to do that, even if it only takes a few seconds, because those few seconds can make all the difference in the world between how the rest of your relationship is shaped with that person. So there's some communication tips here on 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for today. That's it for today. I am Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 13th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Now, I have a framework that I believe is flexible enough for me. And the interesting thing about time crafting is that the flexibility that you have with it is very personal. You may have a schedule that is very rigid. You may have a lot of meetings and a lot of things that happen with absolute certainty every single week. And so that framework in and of itself that's already been kind of thrust upon you is so rigid that you need to have more flexibility within that framework, because you just don't have as much control as you might think. But let me dig in a little bit deeper to this. When it comes to frameworks, you want to have the flexibility that matters to you inside of it. If you know that you are working a 9-to-5 job, for example, and inside of that there's so much dynamic stuff going on that for you to be able to nail down a daily theme for any of those days is impossible, then that's okay. Then you may want to look at things like, okay, how much time do I have between meetings? So using times to kind of indicate, hey, when can I work on these things? Or energy levels, like I've talked about before. If you're a morning person, you may want to tackle those heavier lifting tasks earlier in the day. And if you're a night owl, you may want to tackle some of the heavier stuff later in the day. And same thing goes with the lower energy tasks. You may want to leverage your time that way and your attention that way. The different type of activities that you do. Hey, you know what? I'm going to deal with communicating in the morning because that way I can get all that stuff out there. And then I'm going to deal with all of my researching later in the day when people aren't bothering me as much. You really need to look at the shape of your day and the shape of your schedule in order to figure out what's going to fit for you, so that you can have some flexibility in a week or in a day that may not seem to be flexible at all. Now, how does this relate to my schedule? Well, people, when they hear about how I structure my day and my week, they say, oh, that seems really, really rigid. The fact that you don't have any room for spontaneity. I disagree that I don't have room for spontaneity. I have the right amount of rigidity and the right amount of flexibility. I have my just right factor in there. I know that on a Friday when it's deep work day, my focus is to be on deep work. But if I'm feeling like I'm not able to get deep work done because I'm not at 100%, then I cast that aside for that instance and focus on, hey, let me do some of this shallow work stuff, the stuff I know I can do when I have little to no energy. Those kind of things really, really can help. So again, your framework needs to be flexible enough for you and you alone. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I hope this was helpful. I'm Mike Vardy, and I will see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 14th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. I used to batch all of the episodes of this podcast into my listening day, and I would do them all on a Wednesday, which is my listening day. That's because it just made the most sense to do it. There was nobody around the house, and I decided that that would be the way to record these. I mapped out all of the episodes that I wanted to do. I had everything mapped out actually until this day. That was something that I had done in advance, and I still do that. But what I don't do anymore is I don't batch all of my episodes to be done on my listening day any longer. And there's a reason for that. I've talked about this in past episodes, but I like to make waves every day. And one of the waves that I wasn't making was my audio wave. I wasn't doing audio work every single day. I didn't feel that connection to my audio tasks because I wasn't doing them on days other than Wednesdays. So what I decided to do was I took a look at my schedule and I said, okay, listen, what are the core listening tasks that I'm going to do on Wednesday, which is my listening day? And that involved a weekly podcast. Why? Because it's weekly. So I would do things like review analytics, record the opening and closings to episodes, things like that. Things that I know were going to take, let's say, not more time. Well, actually, yes, more time. But also there was a lot more to it than that. Whereas this podcast, the 3 Minutes of Time Crafting podcast, I can literally sit down and record one episode per day, most days of the week. And not only do I fulfill that waves that I want to fulfill, but I also am able to build off of that as momentum for my day. So doing this daily podcast earlier in the day, before lunchtime, and sometimes even earlier than that, it allows me to kind of have a jump start for my day. And if I'm reading something and I find that I'm inspired by it, then I can go with that. If I am having a conversation with someone, I can run with that as maybe the central theme of that day's episode. So it gives me more, go figure, flexibility, which I've talked about recently as well, within the framework. Now, again, there are going to be instances where I can't record audio on a given basis. So, for example, I'm recording this in a batch, in a series of episodes, because my kids are going to be home more over the next couple days than usual. So I recorded, Friday's episode, Saturday's episode, Sunday's episodes, and Monday's episode all at once because it just made the most sense. It's what was reasonable to do. So there you go, a bit of insights as to how I'm able to do audio every single day and how sometimes batching can work, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the only way you do something. This has been your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 15th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So I always start these episodes with the word so, and it's feeling like I am trying to, impart something really quickly. So here's the deal. And what I'm going to share with you today is the deal of writing this book that I'm working on, which is my next big project. And the process of writing a book, especially as opposed to a blog post or a social media update or anything like that, is that there is a sense of permanence to this book when it gets out there. I'm looking at all of my past work, the front 9, how to start the year you want, anytime you want. That's informing the new book. The Productivityist Playbook is informing the new book. Even some of the other lesser known books that I've written that are on Amazon and or that are free through the website, that those are informing the book writing process. There is a lot to writing a book. The whole process of putting a book together is daunting. But what I want to share with you today is that in order for me to write this book, I've had to take doses of my own medicine in instances where I didn't think I would need to. because you'd think I would know all of this already. So, for example, when I sit down to write, my brain is immediately going, oh, you have to write this book. This book has to be done by a certain time. All of these things are going on in your head. Oh, it's the middle of April already. You need to get this done. Instead of breaking down that project to its smallest particles. Hey, you know what? I need to spend time reviewing this chapter to make sure that anything I dictated makes sense. I need to review a chapter in The Gift of Time to make sure that stuff in there that needs to be in this book is in this book. I need to sit down and write 500 words for this section. Having very small steps and small elements, these particles of this project is really helpful. And when you're looking ahead to the outcome, to the final result, sometimes you get caught up in the final result, the book that it is going to be, all the other things that need to happen. Just work at it bit by bit, step by step, no matter what it is, whether it's a book, whether it's a big project of any sort, break it down to its smallest particles. Because that project is the way you're going to make that project as great as it can be is by making sure that every step along the way is covered. And I'm feeling that right now as I'm going through this entire process. It's a fun process, but it's a big process. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I hope this was helpful. I hope you can relate to this. I'm Mike Vardy, and I will see you later. Here is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 16th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. I have a pretty good memory. Well, let me rephrase that. I've had a pretty good memory. I'm usually really good at remembering long moments of time from a long time ago. So I can remember driving through Georgia and seeing this pecan at the side of the road. I can remember very momentous occasions like that. But there are instances that I can feel that my memory is going and I'm forgetting more stuff. I'm not sure if it's because, I'm just getting older. I'm sure that plays a role. But I think also it's that I am more reliant and I rely more on my ability and my process of just capturing things as they come to me so that I don't have to rely on my memory as much as I'm a big believer in relying on your brain to do the deep, heavy work, almost the creation work, as opposed to the retention work. I think that there are other things that are far better at doing that. Journaling, calendars, things like that, things that are, external. Whereas I think memories being internalized, I think that they can play tricks on you. So when it comes to forgetting, I think it's okay to forget. And further to that, I think that when it comes to time crafting, it's almost that you have to be okay with forgetting and then knowing that you're going to forget things and then making sure that you're putting yourself in the best position so that, you don't have to worry about forgetting anything. That, at this time of year that it's probably the time that you should be weeding the garden. So putting it on your to-do list to say, hey, don't forget to weed the garden or call the gardener or whatever. So I think that we need to be okay with forgetting the trivial so that we can remember the things that really matter. And if you know that you're going to forget the trivial anyway, then it's probably best to put yourself in a position that, to have a system that allows you to not have to worry about forgetting them, to say, hey, I just have to look at this list or refer to this document. And I know that these are the things that need to happen. Again, I think it's also crucial to do that when it comes to steps for a project, putting down the minimum viable details for tasks. So that way you don't forget anything. So when it comes to forgetting, we're all going to do it. Some will do it more than others. Some things will fall through the cracks while others don't. You have to own it and you have to figure out a way to get past that so that the things that you are prone to forget, you don't worry about them slipping through the cracks again and again. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 17th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. When you open a banana, when you grab a banana and you decide to open it, which way do you open it? Do you open it from the stem that's at the supposed top of the banana, or do you open it from the base of the banana? What's interesting is that the actual way that most monkeys and primates open up the banana is they use the base of the banana. They don't use the top part because they use that as kind of a handle. But for years, I've always used the top part of the banana because I figured it was almost like a zipper piece that you just unzip and then the banana peels. Turns out that's not the most practical way to do it. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means for me it's not the most practical, and for all practical purposes it's probably not the best way to do it. But you've probably been doing it that way for years too. Only recently have I stopped doing it that way. And it seems weird to discuss bananas and how we open bananas when I'm supposed to be talking to you about time crafting, but realistically there's something to this. It's about the biases that we have. This idea that this is the way I've always done it, so this must be the way it's supposed to be done, is prevalent not just in opening bananas, but in so many other things that we do in our daily lives. So what you need to start to do is start to question those things, not necessarily to prove that they are not true, but to find out if they are true in the first place and decide whether that matters to you or not. For example, if you are looking at a task and it seems much larger to you than it really appears, work on report, write book, plan vacation, you may need to break that down to smaller tasks, break that project down to smaller particles. But for things like grocery shopping, you may not need to do that because you've done it so often. So really what this is all about is about questioning what you have always held to be, popular beliefs, and ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really the best way to do it? Does this make the most sense? Are there other ways to look at it? And when you do that, by the way, you don't just open up the world of opportunity for you to look at things and approach things differently, but you are also able to be more open to the way other people do things as well, which can be really helpful when you're not only crafting your time, but kind of keeping track of what others are doing, because frankly, they have an impact on your time as well. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I hope you enjoyed this little weird episode. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. Here's your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 18th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Diamond Dallas Page had something that he did. He's a wrestler, and he now runs the very popular DDP Yoga program, which is basically taken the fitness world by storm in some respects. And he used to start off his music with the term, at least when he was in WCW, self-high five. So this idea of high-fiving yourself, like congratulating yourself, praising yourself. And he's an interesting story because he was basically a guy who joined the wrestling industry really late, was a manager, and then ultimately became a wrestler after being a manager. And normally it works the other way around. You're an accomplished wrestler, you retire, you become a manager. It worked the exact opposite way for him. And by the time he was wrapping up, his run in WCW, when WCW went out of business, he was one of their final champions. He had a hot run where he was tag teaming with Karl Malone on main events of pay-per-views. And he still to this day is regarded as one of the greater underdog stories in professional wrestling. Why do I tell you this? Why do I say that, why do I tell you about a professional wrestler when it comes to time management? Well, first off, number one, it's never too late to ultimately do what you want to be doing. As I'm sitting here right now thinking about that stuff, after just watching Jerry Maguire again and reading, the manifesto, the statement, the mission statement of the things we think and do not say. And during that mission statement, he actually mentioned something which I thought was rather interesting. He said, one of the quotes is, driving home, I think of what was not accomplished instead of what was accomplished. I think it's important when you look at your to-do list at the end of the day, when you look at your week at the end of the week, when you look at your month at the end of the month, and when you look at your year at the end of the year, that you don't look at what you didn't do so much as you look at what you did do. Yes, there are going to be things that you're not going to get done. There are going to be things that you did not accomplish, but you need to give yourself praise for the things that you did. That idea of self-praise is important. You don't want to fool yourself during that process, but by the same token, and journaling is a great way to do this, by the way, you want to give yourself praise for the things that you did accomplish, because, and even the small things, the things you maybe never intended to do, but you did, because those things can lead to bigger results down the line. I mean, look at Diamond Dallas Page. He was a bouncer, then became a wrestling manager, and then became the world champion of wrestling. It's phenomenal. So remember, give yourself a high five every once in a while for the things you did, because they matter. Here's your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Tasks are hidden everywhere. Sometimes they are hard to find. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight. A great example of tasks that are hiding in plain sight are the ones that are hidden inside of much larger tasks, which are not actually tasks at all. They're projects. A great example of a bunch of hidden tasks is plan your meals for the week. You could say that inside of there will be 7 different hidden tasks, possibly 21, if you want to say plan breakfast for Monday, plan breakfast for Tuesday, plan lunch for Monday, plan lunch for Tuesday, plan dinner, and so on and so forth. You could also say that inside of that task is the idea of grocery shopping. There are lots of tasks that can hide inside of much larger task projects. I call them the particles of projects. In order to uncover those, you need to break down projects to their smallest component. I have drilled this home on several episodes of this daily podcast, as well as in my writing and a bunch of other places. So that's one place where tasks can be hidden. So when you see a task that is large, which is a project, know that there are tasks hiding inside of it. That's one very obvious place. Once you get used to actually playing the game a bit more and looking for these hidden tasks. Another place that tasks are hidden, and they actually also, they don't hide in plain sight, but they hide and they try to fool you. They almost appear and disappear, kind of like a whack-a-mole, is in your head. There are tasks that are in your head that are hiding there that need to be put out in front of you. They need to be put into a digital app. They need to put on a paper planner. They need to put on somewhere. They need to get out of your head. So the next time you have some task that pops into your mind, don't let it sit there, because it will find places to hide. It will hide behind other, more important things in the moment. It will hide behind the throes of a busy day. It will hide in places that you would not even think to look. So when you find that hidden task that is inside of your head, get it out of your head and put it somewhere where you can see it and find it much easier. And then better still, have a framework in place that allows you to make sure it doesn't get lost inside of that framework, because tasks can also get hidden in a very large to-do list application or a very large planner, because if it's not, the list isn't segmented well enough, it's going to be harder to find them. It's not as hard to find there and in other places, but hidden tasks, they need to be found. They want to be found, and that way they can be done. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. Here's your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 20th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. I have been a proponent of using apps for a long time, ever since I was able to get my first iPhone, which I managed to get through eBay in the United States and bring to Canada when very few people had them. I was a big believer in what the smartphone could do, and especially the iPhone when it came to apps. One of the biggest things I wanted to try were to-do list apps that would allow me to look at the tasks and stop using a daily planner and other digital tools that weren't necessarily as fully functioned as, say, the iPhone was. But there's an inherent problem with using tools like apps that you don't really take into account when it comes to time and attention management and task management and all that stuff, is the fact that a lot of these apps change over time, whether it's the user interface or whether the app even survives. And I've seen, believe me, my fair share of productivity and time management apps that have gone by the wayside over the years. There is no timelessness to an app. A lot of apps have frameworks built in that can have a timeless element to them. But what tends to happen is we rely on the app, and then when the app goes away or makes changes or changes the way that they're framing their pricing structure and so many other things, we end up freaking out because the app is what we've come to rely on. But again, you can't rely on timelessness of apps when it comes to your time management, because apps by their very nature evolve. They are not timeless. Technology changes. There's constant innovation, and sometimes with innovation comes obsolescence rather than obsolescence, and ultimately deletion though. So here's what I want you to think about. The next time you look at a to-do list app, you're going to want to look at something that's simple, that you can adapt to your needs. And not only that, but you could do it on paper. You can use it in a variety of ways, which is what I love about TimeCrafting. One of the things that I've developed with TimeCrafting is the ability to use any app you want and timecraft within that app. So the ability to look at an app and be able to say, you know what, if this app goes away, I'll be okay, because it's the framework and the approach that needs the timelessness aspect to it, because you're not going to get that inside of an application. So I want you to think about that going forward. Look for timelessness in your framework and in your approach and in your process, not so much in the tools that you use to get the job done. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 21st, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. The Samsung Galaxy Fold is a brand new shiny phone, and I loved watching the videos that Casey Neistat did about it, Levi Allen, and all of the newness around it. I even signed up, I'll admit it, I signed up to learn more about the tool when it comes out, this phone. Not because I'm going to move to Android. I'm still very much an iOS user, although, you know, there are some things that I really like about the phone. The fact that I can turn it from a small device into a big device may eliminate the need to have a small device such as an iPhone and a bigger device such as an iPad. But I digress. Why am I fascinated by this? Why am I not the only one that's fascinated by this? I'll tell you. It's the newness surrounding it. It's a new technology. It's a new device. And here's what happens when something new shows up. We tend to look at it as something that not that we can't live without, but it's shiny, it's new, it takes us hostage in a way. It captures our imagination, and it pulls us away from the things that are, as I talked about before, timeless. I talked about this yesterday, this timelessness component. Newness is great. We all, as human beings, one of our natural inclinations is to explore, is to find new things, inside of old things. But I bet you that many of you listening, if you're listening right now, there are probably things that are brand new inside of the technology and devices and the approaches that you use that you haven't even scratched the surface of yet, let alone discovered. So here's the thing. When you're looking at something new, see where it came from in the first place. See what you're already using in the first place, and see if you can carve something new out of that. I can tell you that as I've developed time crafting, that there has been a lot of evolutions and changes to it over the years that I've developed it. There has been new things that I've thought about. You know, getting rid of the 3 words and putting the annual axiom in, for example. Adding things like the daily baseline for a productive day. Things like that. There's newness within the framework, the construct of the thing that is timeless, the thing that is older, the thing that is established. So yeah, get the Samsung Galaxy Fold if your intention is to use it in a way that the newness is something that you can leverage. If you don't want to buy a new iPad or a new tablet and a new phone, and it can be all in one device, that's fine. But don't buy it because it's new. Don't invest in something new because it's new. Invest in it because it's going to work, because there's a need there. That's it for your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. Here is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 22nd, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Whenever I look at my monthly themes, the first thing I think about is the fact that they are my overarching focus for a period of 28 to 31 days, depending on the month. But the reason that I've chosen them is because of the impact that they will have, not just on the lives of others, but on my own life. Impact is such an important consideration when you are talking about productivity and time management. When you are looking at your to-do list, if you can see the impact that doing those things will have on you and on others, and it's a positive impact, then it's a task or a project worth working on. In fact, if you want to make sure it has the maximum impact it can, then you're going to want to make sure you put forth your best effort, which may mean breaking down that project into smaller parts, which you should do anyways, but it may also mean that it's not, you need to time it right. So for example, releasing my new book, I would love to have that come out sooner, but in order for it to have the impact that I want it to have, it's going to have to come out later. And if I want to make sure that it has the greatest impact of all, then I've had to break down the book project into several different components, such as the writing of the book, the planning of the book, all of that stuff is spread over an extended period of time because I want it to have that much of an impact. When you think about something that's near and dear to my heart, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the new movie Avengers Endgame is coming out just in a couple of days. It is the culmination of over 20 films over a nearly 11-year period that's going to culminate in this final story of the Infinity Saga. It's taken a lot of time. The impact of even the movie before this, Infinity War, was huge. Imagine the impact that this final film is going to have. So I want you to look at your to-do list and see not what tasks need to be done and what you want to do, but what impact those tasks are going to have. And if they're not going to have much of an impact, ask yourself if they need to be done at all or if you need to be the one that's doing them. And better still, if there are things that need to be done and you're confused or conflicted as to whether or not you should spend the time to show someone how to do it or train someone how to do it, remember that there are other tasks on your list or other projects that do require you over above all else. And in order for you to have the impact that you want to have with it, you're going to have to let go of some stuff. So think about that as you look at your to-do list today, tomorrow, and going forward. This has been your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. Here's your 3 Minutes of Time Crafting for April 23rd, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. The days are busy. The weeks are busy. The hours, the minutes. So much is going on. I was talking to someone today about how fast the world is and how what may seem like 2 years feels like one, and what feels like 1 year may actually be two. Time is moving on whether we want it to or not. And the one thing that we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of along the way, because it impacts everything else. And I wrote about this in a edition of the dailies not too long ago, is the idea that there's 5 key ingredients to pure personal productivity. The 2 are very particular, which I talk about all the time, which are intention and attention. Those are the purest ones, the ones you need the most. But in order for all of that to really kind of take hold, is you need to have awareness. When you lose awareness, you lose sight of why you're doing things in the first place. You lose sight of why things are happening the way they are. You aren't as grounded. I shared a video not too long ago, which was an abridged version of video of David Foster Wallace's commencement speech, "This is Water." Awareness is one of the key components to figuring stuff out and being present. And when you lose that, then it's a very slippery slope, because without awareness, you can't have clarity. And without clarity, you can't have focus. And without focus, intention and attention end up being both powerless and directionless in a lot of ways, even when they work together in tandem. If you're not aware, you can't get clear. And if you can't get clear, then you can't focus. And so your intentions, no matter how powerful they might seem to be, you can't grab onto them. And without attention to be married with those, they just skirt on by, or they get buried in so much other stuff. I've recently started meditating again. It was a practice I stopped because I thought, well, no, I'm good. I'm getting the right things done. But when I meditate, my awareness is heightened. And so I'm getting back into it. Now, you may not need to meditate. Maybe it's just you need to go for a walk. Maybe journaling is what you need to do. But whenever you feel lost in your to-do list, lost in your work, lost period, like overwhelmed, try to tap into that awareness. Just become more aware. That's a big lesson that you can take away. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. Here is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 24th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. So admin work is one of those things that we all have to do. Administrative work is just an element, and I'm using administrative work as kind of a catch-all for kind of the things that are, they don't really get too deep in terms of, any kind of writing or report writing or anything like that. But administrative work is just, it's almost like maintenance work. In fact, I often use the term maintenance over administrative because it's more about keeping the status quo and, doing the quote busy work rather than doing anything that is going to have a major impact in one fell swoop. Sure, not doing administrative work and not doing maintenance will have an impact as well, but that's because you're letting it go and letting it slide as opposed to, not making progress. In fact, if anything, by doing administrative and maintenance kind of work, you're able to keep the status quo, which is great in some situations, but not great in all. And so why do I want to focus on administrative work on this particular 3 minutes of time crafting episode? Well, the reason is that I used to actually have a day where I focused entirely on administrative work. It was one of my daily themes. But the problem with that is administrative work or maintenance kind of work, the very nature of it is almost perpetual. It needs to be done regularly, if not daily. And so I incorporated into a horizontal theme that I'm doing called maintenance mode. And that happens between 9 and 9:30 in the morning when my energy is at its lowest and I just want to start building momentum for the day. So again, why am I bringing this up? Well, it's pretty clear that you have administrative work to do, both not just in terms of work stuff, because that's the other key thing, but in terms of life stuff. So my recommendation to you, if you are starting to look at all of your tasks on your to-do list, all of the tasks inside of projects that seem to be more maintenance or administrative oriented, is to align them or attune them with the time of day or the days of the week or both that lend itself to, a better time to do it. If you find that administrative work is tough for you to do, you might want to do it during a time of day where it's high energy. If not, then it might be something you might want to do when you have low energy. But you need to kind of batch these kind of things. And so instead of spending a whole day working on administrative work, or instead of, putting yourself in a position where it becomes the thing you do most of the time, I would tend to isolate that stuff and figure out, hey, when can I go into admin or maintenance mode and get that stuff done so I can move on to the stuff that's really going to have an impact in a bigger way. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. I'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 25th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Gratitude is one of the gateways to journaling, and journaling is one of the best things that you can do for productivity. Displaying gratitude puts everything in perspective. It allows you to be more open to what you did achieve and what you do have, as opposed to focusing on what you didn't do and what you don't have. So if you are really struggling with understanding how to deal with overwhelm and not necessarily getting to the level that you want to every single day in terms of tasks completed or measurements achieved, focus on gratitude. And gratitude is something that is easily accessible if you really want to give it a try. There are so many things that we can be grateful for every single day. And I know that that gets a bit touchy-feely for some people, but realistically, it doesn't have to be touchy-feely. It can't be that I'm grateful that the sun is shining. I'm grateful that I live in a beautiful city. It can be, I'm grateful that I have this technology that occasionally drives me nuts that allows me to be connected to people across the miles. For example, my wife is about to head out of town again, and she's going to be gone for 5 days, and I'm grateful that I have the technology to be able to have video calls with her, despite the fact that sometimes my technology is the very thing that keeps me from moving forward with some of the bigger impact things, because it does keep me hyper connected. So always look at things from the perspective of gratitude when you can, because it's a gateway to it's a gateway to appreciation, and appreciation can really foster this understanding that things aren't as, quote, bad as they seem when you're overwhelmed or when you're not feeling super productive. So if you're looking at how you can be grateful, first thing in the morning, display gratitude. The fact that you woke up, that's something to be grateful for. If you're thinking about journaling, which, like I said, is a gateway to better productivity, when you're starting off with your journal entry and you don't know what to journal about what you're grateful for. There are so many ways for you to display gratitude every single day. It doesn't have to be publicly done. It doesn't have to be any big overtures. It's just something that you should do in some small measure, because the small gains of gratitude that you give to yourself and to others every single day will be something that you can build upon. And that's really ultimately what productivity is. It's building upon things bit by bit by bit. And again, my friend Carl Stabe talks about gratitude. He's big on that. And I've learned a lot from him on that, and I know that you can too. So that's it. That's your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later.
Here's your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 26th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. When you look at your to-do list every single day, I think one of the most important things you can ask yourself is this taking me in the direction that I ultimately want to go? Are the majority of the items on here doing that? Sure. You're going to have, as I've mentioned, your administrative tasks. You're going to have the stuff that you're destined to do primarily because if you don't do them, then you're going to run into issues down the road. So you understand that. Hopefully you understand that those things may have been able to be done earlier and you've waited too long. So when you look at your to-do list, it's important to kind of analyze it. Not just get at it and go. Not just open up your email and see what other things may have come your way and then get at it and go after you've dealt with all those things. Really look at your to-do list, because your to-do list can be kind of twisted if you don't. It can twist and turn you into directions that you never wanted to go and didn't expect to go. It could be driven by intentions that you really don't have. It could be driven by old intentions. It could be driven by intentions that are not of the bigger picture overall, but just of the pure moment. I'll give you a great example. Finance can often twist what goes on your to-do list. If you are feeling that you're in a financial pinch and you say, I've got to do this because I've got to earn more money, you may be sacrificing valuable time with your kids or valuable time on things that will ultimately pay off better in the long run for short-term gains. But here's the thing is that, there was a quote that I heard recently, no amount of money will buy you 1 second of time. So really, when you take a look at your to-do list, really look at it, segment your to-do list. I've always said that, really leverage the time that you have in the day to accomplish the things in your to-do list that you really need to be accomplishing. Look at it and say, hey, I may not need to be doing this, or I may need to put some kind of process in place to make this easier. Don't let your to-do list twist you around, because when you get twisted around too much, you get dizzy, and it's kind of like spin the tail on a donkey. You end up walking around and you get nowhere near the target. And you cheer yourself on because you get that close to it, but wouldn't it be better if you get close every single time, if not hit the exact target? So get out of your own way and make sure that your to-do list is doing everything to help you do that. There you go. That's it. So take a look at your to-do list this morning and ask yourself, is it getting me where I really want to go? This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. Here's your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 27th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. I
wanted to make sure that I dedicated more of my time and energy, not just to noticing things visually, which I've been reading an advanced copy of Rob Walker's new book, The Art of Noticing, but noticing things audibly. And while hearing is how you would do that to a degree, it's really listening that puts you in a better position to really notice things. And it really kind of compels you to pay attention. And attention is one of those key elements in productivity. So hearing what has been said, or what your heart or your brain or what your to-do list is kind of trying to say to you, is one thing, but really listening to it plays a role. And a lot of the things that I listen to aren't just from what other people are saying, but from what I'm saying internally. And much like anything else, much like to really, watch or look as opposed to see, listening is far more active than passive. You really need to focus. You need to try to remove any and all other noise, in this case, actual sound noise, from the equation so that you can really listen. And it also takes patience to do that too, because sometimes you don't notice things right away when you're listening. You have to. There's nuance, there's tone, there's all that stuff that matters. Hearing it doesn't do that to the same degree. Whereas you really listen, you can do that. And you don't. By the way, listening doesn't always have to happen with your ears either. There are so many different ways to listen. So I challenge you to spend some time not just looking at your to-do list and looking at your calendar over the next week or so or beyond, even your journal entries. Really listen to them. Listen to what the tasks are saying on your to-do list. Listen to what your calendar is telling you. Listen to what your journal entries sound like. Really listen. I guarantee if you do that, you're going to find some things in there that you wouldn't recognize otherwise. So there you have it. Listening matters. Taking the time to listen really does matter. And it can play a huge role in how well you invest and spend your time. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 28th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. I've seen Avengers Endgame. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I saw it at the very first opportunity I could, the first showing on the day it came out. I have a coin to prove it. I was at the fan event. Heroism is something that's been hugely represented in movies over the years, and now we're seeing more and more superhero movies. In fact, so much so that they're the ones that are earning all the money. They're the ones that are getting all the hype. And what's interesting to me about heroism is, as I've spent time looking at that, I've been thinking about and I've been adding this to my book, by the way, the idea of tasks that are almost heroic and the ones that are not. What tasks are going to, that can essentially save the day. You can be your own hero every single day, and there are certain tasks that will allow you to do that. Some of them are big, some of them are small. Here's an example of one that, one that could be big for you. It's taking the time to exercise, to work towards getting in shape. That could be a heroic task for you because it has a much greater impact than you might realize at first glance. Taking the time to be social. That's another one of my daily, being social. That can be something that's heroic in that even if you take the time to pick up the phone and call someone you haven't spoken to in a long time, or write them a letter, or even drop them a text, that can be heroic. Admitting that you've made a mistake can be heroic too. Like asking, telling someone that you've, and actually this is pretty funny because today it wasn't really so much I made a huge mistake, but there was, I was talking to someone about Stephen Covey, and they said, oh yes, I'm going to be meeting with Stephen Covey. And I said, well, you can't because Stephen Covey's dead. I had I knew that he had a son, Sean Covey, but I had no idea that he also had a son named Stephen Covey. So I texted that person and said, a couple other things, but I also said, hey, by the way, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. There was a Stephen Covey that is still alive. It's the son of the Stephen Covey I was speaking of. Sean is also Stephen's son. That may not seem like a heroic task, but that could be something that, asking for, admitting your mistake, admitting that you were wrong. Those things can be very heroic. So, if you could take some time to look at the appointments on your calendar, the tasks on your to-do list, and we talked about listening to your tasks and listening to your calendar and listening to your journal entries. So now maybe take a look and find out which ones are the heroic ones that might be hiding in plain sight. I've talked about hidden tasks as well. Heroic tasks are there. Isolate them, figure them out, and then recognize that if you do them, you could really save your day. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 29th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. When you wish for something, you are basically setting out your ideals for an intention that you want to have happen. If you were to wish to have let's use me as an example, the book I'm working on, that it goes well during launch. That's a wish. I wish that will happen. You have the ability to be your own genie in a bottle with situations like that. When you're wishing and putting your wish list together, we talk about wish lists all the time. There's a wish list for gifts that you might want to receive. There's a wish list on Amazon. There's a wish list on, apps on the App Store. Wishes are things that you desire. And sometimes you put those out to the universe with the hopes that someone will be able to help you get there. But in many cases, you have the ability to make that wish come true on your own, should you really want it. If I wish that my book launch was to be successful, there are things that I can do to help make that wish come true. But the problem with a lot of things that we wish for is that we put it out to the universe and then hope that it lands, hope that it comes our way. I wish to have all the things on my to-do list taken care of today. Well, that's going to take some effort, some energy, and the stars may have to align a certain way to make that happen. But there are ways that you can frame your days, frame your time in such a way that you can get either the wish of realizing your day working out the way you want it to, such as getting all your heroic tasks done and all that such. That can happen. So the wish part, which I want to kind of address. First off, some wishes are not realistic at all, at least in the present moment. That's what journaling's for. That's what, vision boards are for, to a degree, because they are long-term kind of ideals, long-term goals, let's say. But there are some wishes that you can take care of right away. Like, I want to have a better day. Okay, well, how do I do that? So the wish, if you could follow it up with the why do you want that wish to be realized and how you're going to put it together? Your wish list can actually become a to-do list. It may look very different once it turns from a wish list to a to-do list, because one is aspirational and one might be actionable. But nonetheless, wishes can appear on your to-do list. They just need to be isolated and kind of unpacked in a way that makes them doable. So it's okay to put wishes on your to-do list. Maybe you want to tag them as such. Hey, this is a wish. Because then that kind of compels you to break them down into something that can really actually happen. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting for today. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later. This is your 3 minutes of time crafting for April 30th, 2019. I'm Mike Vardy. Yeah, I can't sleep. It's weird because I occasionally am able to stay up late. In fact, more often than not, I'm able to stay up late. But recently I've found that there's some nights where I need to go to bed early. This was one of those nights, but I got to be honest, I can't sleep. And what I want to get across with this particular episode is the fact that being honest is one of those key elements to productivity and your to-do list that you need to adhere to. If you're not honest with the amount of activity that's on your to-do list as to what's doable, what isn't, if you're not honest in terms of listening to what your body is trying to tell you, if you're not honest with the amount of commitments that you can make, that are doable versus which ones aren't, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Honesty is one of those cornerstones that we think of just as a basic human decency element, but it does play a role in our productivity. Let me break things down for you. Breaking things down is a great example of being honest. When you look at your to-do list, ask yourself, is your to-do list being honest with you? Is it truly broken down in a way that it's not deceiving you, that it's something that you can trust? That's one way. Looking at the idea of theming your days, which I've talked about before. If you look at the idea of theming your days and you dismiss it out of hand because it's just something that you can't possibly do, or theming your time is just not something you can do, then that's not being honest either. There are things that you need to take a look at when it comes to productivity and time management that are perpetual. Things like focus, things like awareness, things like clarity, attention, intention, those two last parts specifically. But for any of those to really matter, honesty needs to be one of those things that happen up front. If you're not honest about your intentions, won't matter if you pay attention to them. If you're not honest about where your attention's going, then it's really not being paid properly. If you're not honest about the things that you're being clear about, then it won't matter if you're clear. If you're not honest about the things that you're trying to become aware about, if you're not honest about your focus, none of that stuff will matter. So really take a look at the things that you're trying to accomplish. Take a look at your work habits. Take a look at all of that stuff and ask yourself, are you really being honest about them? And are they being honest with you in return? Those things are really key elements when it comes to your personal productivity. And they often get overlooked because, well, to be honest, sometimes they don't seem to matter. This has been your 3 minutes of time crafting. I'm Mike Vardy. We'll see you later.